Okay, so in this video we're going to go all the way back to my first ever Ironman and talk about what I learned training for that. In hindsight, the things that I might have done right, might have done wrong, and to give you some tips if you're training for your first Ironman, or maybe you've done one before but you want to improve on your next one, then this video is for you. So I guess if we go back to the start, I obviously started out as an elite level swimmer, was swimming since the age of about 8 or 9, all the way up until I was around 20, trying to make the Olympics as a swimmer or just go as far as I could in swimming. I specialised in long distance freestyle, so I was trying to make the Olympic Games on the 800 metre freestyle in the pool, but I also dabbled with open water swimming and was trying to make the marathon swim for the Olympic Games in London. After that Olympics passed and I didn't qualify, I was in a bit of a period where I was like, do I continue with swimming, try and make the next Olympics, or do I decide to do something different? And I was kind of falling out of love with swimming. It's a really, really tough sport. It's just full on morning, evening, head down, follow the black line. So I decided that I didn't want to continue with swimming for another 4 years, another Olympic cycle to make the next games. So I actually stopped doing sport altogether and started working in marketing at a local zoo. Whilst I was there working, I really did miss that commitment and drive to a goal that sport had taught me since such a young age. I just decided on a bit of a whim with my now husband Reese to sign up for an Ironman and give ourselves a challenge, something that scared us to train really, really hard and commit to something again. And that is where the Ironman journey started for us back in 2013. So the first Ironman that I did was Ironman UK in 2014. It was their 10th anniversary of the race. I signed up in August 2013 and the race was taking place in July 2014. So I had almost a whole year to train for the event. I knew I had some good fitness from my swim background, but I had zero experience with cycling or running anywhere near a marathon distance. So it was going to be a huge challenge. The family thought that Reese and I were crazy when we signed up for it, but we knew that we would commit fully to just completing the distance. It was never about a time or anything like that. It was just about trying to finish the distance and complete this challenge and be able to say that we was an Ironman. I was turning 21 the year that the Ironman happened, so that was another reason that I wanted to do the goal, to kind of make my 21st year a bit special. In hindsight, when I look back, I literally knew absolutely nothing. I hadn't even thought about fueling or what equipment I would need or anything like that. And I was just really lucky to have Reese as my partner, who was studying sports science at the time and was able to look into all of these things and how many calories would we need, what should we eat on the bike, what should we eat on the run. Like, things like stomach issues was never something I really considered as a swimmer because the race wasn't long enough. Even the 10k marathon swim would take me only 2 hours, so maybe you'd have a gel or two, whereas this race was going to take us over 12 hours realistically. So we was looking at how we're going to fuel that. It was a complete minefield to anything we'd ever done before, and I actually don't think I would have done it without Reese looking into everything and making sure we had the right bike and what gears do we need for that course. All of these things were completely new to us. I mean, when you swim, you need a hat and goggles and a swimsuit. It's that straightforward. When you do an Ironman, the list of equipment that you need just to complete it was just something that we had never even considered before. Roughly, my finish time was 12 hours, 15, 16 minutes, around that ballpark. So for Ironman UK, which is a really tough course, that definitely exceeded my expectations. I went in and, like I said, I didn't really have a finish time goal. I just wanted to finish and be able to say that I was an Ironman. At the time, Reese and I actually did the race for charity, so we were racing for Scope charity. We didn't even have enough money to afford the entry fee at the time. We were buying second-hand equipment on eBay and just trying to get everything we could just to finish. Looking back, I think that was an amazing time as a 20-year-old doing an Ironman on a pretty tough course in the UK. I guess if we look forward to now, there's absolutely no way I would have seen myself having a career in this. It was just about achieving that challenge, becoming an Ironman. And at the time, Reese and I were setting up our personal training business. So we kind of felt like if you've said, okay, I've done an Ironman, people do sort of know what that is and go, okay, they must know what they're talking about because they've been able to complete an Ironman. Now, looking where we are now, it's kind of still does blow my mind of what we've achieved in this sport. Now, where I am in the sport, I've been doing this for about 10 years since that first ever Ironman, and I've definitely learned a lot. I've become a pro athlete in the sport. I do this as my job. Looking back then, the things I just wasn't aware about, like for example, Bolton was a 2-lap bike course at the time, riding the entire first lap in the little ring of my bike because I was too scared to go across to the big ring because I thought I'd drop my chain. Now, if I were to drop my chain, I'd be like, all right, well, that's a 2-second job to just get the chain back on. But looking back then, I was like, oh no, I don't want to drop my chain. I don't know what I'll do. So I guess I just had no experience. Even something like changing a puncture at the time was terrifying, and we'd practiced at home a little bit before, like how quickly could we do it. But all these things just come as second nature when you've been doing the sport for 10 years. I didn't have a clue about fueling and what nutrition I would take, and now this is something that, again, it's just second nature. I've got it so dialed. I've tried it so many times in training, and I guess when I was training for that first Ironman, my focus was just on being fit enough to complete the distance. So I didn't even really have much time to practice the nutrition. I just used the on-course nutrition, and now if I even look at that brand, it makes me want to be sick because I just use that nutrition to death on race day. I don't know if I had too much or too little, but I definitely couldn't use that brand again. Now, like I said, I feel like I've got it so dialed. I practice it in training nearly every single week because actually training your gut is just important as training yourself to be fit enough to do it. So there's so many things that if I went back now, I probably would have spent more time just practicing those little things along the way as well. But it's super hard. I mean, when I was training for that first Ironman, I was working 2 jobs. I was trying to make ends meet just to pay for getting the equipment that I needed. So hats off to everyone who's training for their first Ironman and balancing a job and a family. I've been there trying to balance 2 jobs and training for an Ironman, and it is so tough. Depending on what you want to achieve in this first Ironman, or if it's one of your early Ironmans, then I would say one of the best things you can do is either seek out a coach or just someone that will give you advice along the way and have a solid plan that you're going to try and stick to. So look at when the race is, how many months have you got to train for it, looking at realistically how much time can you give to your training per week around your work and family and different commitments that you have, and then just looking at, okay, right, how am I going to spread that across the week? What are your strengths and weaknesses? If you're a really strong cyclist, then maybe you want to spend a little bit more time working on your swim, which might be a weakness. So it's just balancing that training in the right way. And if you've got someone who's external, a bit of an expert in their field, then it can really help you devise that training plan. I think the worst thing you can do when you're training for an Ironman is wake up and be like, oh God, right, what training am I going to do today? Like, you need to have a solid plan, and so that you can go, okay, right, I can train there, then I'm going to be working at that point, I can eat then, and just making sure that you have got a solid plan. It just makes it so much easier to, even the day before, you know what you're going to be doing the next few days in your training. So that would be my key piece of advice, is have a solid plan that you're going to follow and then you can work everything else around that. But also don't stress if you have got to miss sessions and you've got to move things around slightly. You've got to be flexible, and there's no way that just because it's on paper it's the perfect plan. I've learned that along the way, that actually every single week my plan will change slightly because of how I'm feeling or something might come up. It's definitely important to not get too bogged down with the training plan. It's just a bit of a guide for you to make your life easier to work around. If you've never ever done an Ironman before, maybe you have a little bit of experience in sport, maybe you don't have any, I think it's really, really important that you build your training up gradually. You don't just go from 0 to hero. Just being realistic with where you're at, where you want to be, but obviously building it up in a gradual way. I think if you go too hard in the beginning, you're really likely to get injured or just find it hard to stay motivated throughout the process. Starting quite easy in the beginning, it doesn't need to be super intense training, you just want to build up that volume. Ultimately, Ironman is about being able to race over a long distance of time, so you want to be able to train quite a high volume, just build up that fitness. But like I said, start realistic in the beginning and see that progression build throughout the process all the way to your Ironman. I think when you're looking at how much training you need to do in a week, then you just need to look at realistically what is your goal with the race that you have. Are you looking to win your age group, qualify for the World Championships, or are you just looking to finish the distance? If you're just looking to finish the distance, then the amount of hours that you dedicate in a week can be probably as little as 10 hours a week, which does sound like quite a lot, but actually if you spread it over the course of the week and you've got a good plan around when you're going to be training, when you're going to be working, your family, your social life, the different commitments that you have, then you are able to balance that. You're not looking to be a pro athlete and train 30 plus hours a week. If you are looking to compete at the top end of your age group, then you're probably looking to build that training up to maybe around 20 hours per week, but that's when you're peaking in your training. So it is a lot of training, but you've signed up for an Ironman, you haven't signed up for a 5K. This is a huge challenge. So be realistic with what you can achieve in a week and how much you can balance around your family and other life commitments. So actually something that when I look back at my training, when I was training for this first Ironman that I ever did, I wasn't really thinking about fueling in training, and now as a pro athlete that is like second nature. It's so important because actually fueling each session properly allows you to do the next session properly. The second you underfuel a workout, your next session is impacted. So actually really focusing on fueling enough throughout your workouts, using carbohydrates for nearly every session. I actually use carbs on every single workout that I do now, even if they are easy, just to make sure my body isn't breaking itself down. So looking at that and then looking at, okay, this nutrition seems to be working quite well for me. Let's try that for a period of time. And if I get on well, know that that's going to be my race day nutrition. If you use another brand and it just doesn't work for you, know, okay, we're going to scrap that one. That's not going to work for me in the race. So it's all about practicing that nutrition in training before you get to race day. And then the same being on race day, you just practice what you did in training along the way and know that it's going to work. That's kind of a bit of trial and error in the beginning, and then when you find something that works, use it, try it in all of your training, and then use it again on race day. Equipment essentials, depending on where you're going to be racing, you're going to need a swim skin or a wetsuit. That's pretty much a given for the swim section. If you're a super strong swimmer and the weather's warm but it's still wetsuit legal, then you might go without a wetsuit. But to be honest, I'd always opt for the wetsuit over the long distance because it just makes that swim a little bit easier for you. Then looking at the bike, well obviously you're going to need a bike, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a top spec time trial bike, especially if the course is quite hilly, then a road bike is going to be really sufficient. But actually a road bike with tri-bars on can almost be just as good as a time trial bike, especially when you're starting out and you're not in a super aero position anyway. If you're more comfortable over the 180 kilometers on a road bike, it just makes so much more sense. Again, if you're looking for aero gains, then maybe an aero helmet, but if you're going to be riding a road bike, I'd probably just opt for a road helmet. You get a lot more ventilation if it's a hot course than an aero helmet. These are all things to consider, and I guess if you're on a journey of just doing one Ironman, then I'd stick for doing it on the cheapest way possible because it can be so expensive building up all this equipment to complete the distance. And if you're looking of doing a journey of progression and seeing how much quicker you can get over the course of maybe a few years of doing these events, then I'd still start with the more basic equipment, see how it goes, do you enjoy it, then maybe the next one, upgrade a bit of equipment and know that you're probably going to get a bit faster just from the equipment, as well as your training and fitness gains over the years. Looking at the run, again, you're obviously going to need trainers to complete the run, but are you going to opt for the top spec carbon shoes? I'd say it's probably worth it over the marathon distance because it's just going to make the strain on the body a bit less, and you're already going to be racing for a very long period of time. So there's ways that you can get good equipment without spending a fortune. It's pretty easy to pick up second-hand equipment on things like eBay, and that's definitely what I did when I was doing my first Ironman. I'd definitely love to go back to Ironman UK in Bolton one day if they make it a pro race. I'm trying to remember because I did Ironman UK in 2014, but I did it again in 2015, and I think I might have just scraped under the 10-hour mark, so I made a very big progression in that first year of my training, and then after doing that, that was when I started to think about going professional in the sport. I couldn't even guess what I would do now. I'd like to go somewhere in the region of the low 9 hours, but that would be pretty tough on that course. Maybe just dipping under 9 hours, but that would be impressive on that course. It's a really, really tough bike course. You don't really get much bang for your buck. You're climbing, but then it's technical. The road surface in the UK, I think, has probably got worse since I did it. I'm certainly riding out on the roads at the moment. There is potholes absolutely everywhere. So it's not a fast Ironman. If you want to go and do a fast Ironman, there's definitely other ones. But if you want to have a great race on home soil, then I'd definitely recommend it. Hopefully one day I'll go back, whether that's in my pro career or later down the line back as an age grouper. But yeah, hopefully it'll become a pro race at some point.
This young lady produced the fastest women's swim overall, including our pros. She did a 50-minute 45 swim. Her winning time, 7:11, 10:58.44. Great Britain's Lucy Charles.
Representing Great Britain, please welcome Charles-Barclay.
Okay, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed me reflecting back on my first Ironman, and hopefully there were some useful tips in there if you're training for your first. As always, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos coming soon. In however many months' time. That is the dogs in the background.